In this episode, we're going to look at Psalm 24. Now, Psalms are all standalone songs, and so you can understand the lyrics without going sequentially through the book. But because a number of the concepts find repetition in the Psalms, it's helpful if you have seen previous episodes in this series. So if this is your first time catching a Disciple Dojo video, or at least a video in this playlist, all of the Psalms that we've looked at so far are in this playlist here on the channel. And you can find that by going to our main channel page and clicking on playlists. In addition to the Psalms playlist, we also have a number of other playlists, including one that we're going to reference in this episode. So more on that in just a second. But the goal is to create and curate a library of in-depth biblical teaching that is easily accessible and easily shareable anywhere where you have an internet connection. So if you appreciate that and you want to help us continue to grow this channel resource, we would love for you to subscribe if you haven't already. That's the best way to help us out. And when you do, tap that little button that enables notifications. Just a great way to tell YouTube you're interested in this channel and you want to see more of it. All right, let's look at Psalm 24. So this one's not quite as short as the last Psalm we looked at, Psalm 23, but it's still relatively short. I'm going to read it in my old NIV. This is the teaching Bible that I use, but then we're going to look at it in the original languages as always. And there's some really cool stuff in this one that I didn't know until I dug into it. So hopefully it'll be interesting to you as well. But Psalm 24 reads, of David, a psalm. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. For he founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. Who may ascend the hill of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to an idol or swear by what is false. He will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from God his Savior. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, O God of Jacob. Lift up your heads, O you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O you gates. Lift them up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is he, this King of glory? The Lord Almighty. He is the King of glory. All right, let's dig into this psalm a little deeper and see what we find. Some say that this was written to commemorate or written during the time when the ark was brought to Jerusalem. Others say, no, this was ascension, a song of ascension, like when you're going up to worship in Jerusalem, this is a song you would sing. And others say, no, this is has to do with when the armies of Israel would go out or would return from battle. Different interpreters have suggested different events. I think the song works in any and all of them, honestly. It begins, Le David Mezmor, for David, a song. And then the first word of the actual psalm, L'Adonai, for Yahweh, to Yahweh. Haaretz umnoah is the land and her fullness. So for Yahweh or to Yahweh or belonging to Yahweh is the land and its fullness. And then in parallel, the next line, Tevel, the world, v'yoshveh ba, and those dwelling in her. This is the verb. We saw this in the last psalm and the one before it. Kind of a key word tying it together, dwelling or sitting, inhabiting. So to Yahweh, to the Lord, is the land, Aretz, and Aretz can mean land or earth, but it has the sense, especially what we're going to see in the next verse, it has the sense of like what we stand on, where you live, the inhabited land and its fullness. So that would be all of the things that live in it, all of its bounty. And then this word Tevel has a broader sense of the world, specifically the created order, as opposed to the chaotic or the uncreation or the decreation realm, which is going to be introduced in the next line. And why does the earth and its fullness, the world and all dwelling in it, why do they belong to Yahweh? Ki hu, because he, al yamim yasadah, he himself upon the waters founded it. And al could mean upon, like spatially, like on, but al could also mean against. And we'll see why that is, I think, a possibility in just a second. But I think on is the primary meaning. He himself upon the waters founded the Aretz, the Tevel. Va'al Naharoth Yakonaneha. And upon rivers, literally, Naharoth is the plural for Nahar, rivers, he established it. He made it firm. This is the verb that speaks of like founding something, establishing it, firming it up. So this first section of the poem begins by saying that all creation and all who dwell in it belong to Yahweh because he established it upon the waters, upon the rivers. He founded it. He put it in place upon or against the waters, the yamim, and yam is the word for sea or waters. So you could say he founded it upon the sea, and Naharoth, like I said, is the word for rivers or streams or currents. So some translations, I think, say torrents. And this is an echo of an ancient Near East concept that we've looked at here on the channel. If you've seen our series where we walk through the Baal Myth, this is a concept straight out of not just the Baal epic, also the Enuma Elish, some of the Egyptian cosmology. I mean, this was kind of common in the ancient world, but the Baal Myth has the closest parallel because these two terms, Yamim, the word for sea, Yam, Yamim, and Naharoth, rivers. And I'll link to that video series if by chance you haven't seen that one. I feel like most of the people who follow this channel have seen it because it's far and away our most viewed series we've ever done here on the channel. It's over 700,000 views as of right now. But in the Baal Myth, you read about this gathering of the gods, and they're gathering for a banquet. Baal is there, and in Ugaritic, his name is Baalu or Baal, or in English we say Baal. And he's there, and they're all there to dine, and he's attending on Elu, and Elu is El. This is the high god in the Canaanite pantheon, El. So El is the high god, Baal or Baal is the storm god, and earlier, the god of the sea, the chaos god, Yam, had sent an entourage, had sent a delegation to go take a message to the gods who were gathered with El on the mountain of the gods. And look at what happens here. The gods see them, see Yamu's messengers. This is the name of the god of the sea, the chaos serpent, Yam or Yamu. They see Yamu's messengers, the embassy of ruler Naharu. Naharu, this is the cognate word in Ugaritic for Naharoth, Nahar, river. So his name, Yam's nickname is ruler Naharu, ruler of rivers. And so they see his delegation coming, and look, the gods lower their heads onto their knees, onto their princely thrones. The gods get scared. They get dejected. And for the plot of this story, check out that video series that we've done here on the channel. But Baal rebukes the gods, and he says, "Why, gods, have you lowered your heads, even to your knees, even to your princely thrones? As one must, the gods answer, the tablet of Yamu's messengers, the embassy of ruler Naharu." So Baal saying, hey, we all need to band together and answer this delegation that's come with this challenge. So don't lower your heads. Look what he tells them. Lift, O gods, your heads off your knees, off your princely thrones, and let me answer Yamu's messengers, the embassy of ruler Naharu. The gods then raise their heads off their knees, off their princely thrones. And in the Baal myth, Baal goes to respond to Yamu's challenge. He goes and he actually defeats and kills Yamu. And then after Baal kills the god of the sea, Yam, he then has a temple, a palace, a house built for him. And he becomes basically the chief god among the Canaanites, or at least the god that they most, like Marduk was for the Babylonians, he becomes that for the Canaanite peoples. So Baal's lordship was established by defeating Yam, ruler Naharu, literally sea, rivers. That's what those two names mean. Yam's name means sea and Naharu means rivers. So to the Canaanites, their epic taught them that Baal founded the land and established his kingship and his authority and his temple, which is on top of Mount Zaphon, the mountain of God, the mountain of Baal. All of that was because he he overcame the sea and the rivers, personified as Yam. So let's get back to Yahweh is the earth and its fullness, the world and the ones dwelling in her, for he himself upon or against the waters founded it, and against or upon the rivers established it. Do you see the polemic against the surrounding view of the Canaanites? And so, verse 3, Mi ya'aleh bahar Adonai, who will go up, or who can go up, who can ascend bahar Adonai, upon the mountain of Yahweh. So who can go up, who can enter God's mountain, Yahweh's mountain? Umi yakum, and who will stand or will arise? Either of those words can translate yakum, in the place of his holiness, or in his holy place. Now, we immediately, as good Bible readers in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we read this and, we know about mountain of the Lord, and that is an image that's tied to the tabernacle and later the temple and Mount Zion. Ultimately, that's God's mountain. And the holy place, well, that's the temple itself, the holy place, the place of God's holiness where he dwells. So this is like standard Hebrew Bible imagery for the tabernacle and then later the temple. But the echoes of the wider pagan background are right there as well, because it was from the mountain of El, the mountain of God in the pagan version, that Baal went out and conquered Yam, the sea, whose other title was the rivers. So you can hear the polemic against the surrounding pagan culture in this psalm. And so when the psalmist asks, who can ascend, you would expect it to be the one who brings a good offering for the God, because that's what, as we saw in the last psalm, that's what the gods expected, to provide food for them through your offerings. The one who knows the correct name of the God. That was how the Egyptians and some of the other peoples in the ancient world figured that you got the gods to do what you wanted, is you kept them well fed and you knew their name. You called them by the proper name, the proper title. Maybe you brought the biggest and the best sacrifice to them. That's how you came into the God's presence in Israel's neighbors' cultures. In this psalm, though, when the psalmist asks, who can ascend the mountain of the Lord? Look at the answer. It has nothing to do with cultic ritual. It says, Naki kapayim, literally innocent of palms or hands, ubar lavev, and pure of heart. That's who can ascend Yahweh's mountain. Whoever can ascend the mountain of Marduk, of Baal, Moloch, Chemosh, any of the other gods of the surrounding peoples, whoever can ascend those, their worshipers can enter their presence through whatever means they have. But for the God of Israel, for Yahweh, the one who has innocent hands and a pure heart, his deeds symbolized by the hands and his inward disposition symbolized by the heart. And heart is also the word for mind or inner self. There's no distinction in biblical Hebrew between heart and mind. It's just your inside. So hands represent what you do on the outside. Heart represents who you are on the inside. Innocent and pure. That's who can ascend. And then it goes on to spell it out even more. Asher, one who, lo nasa lashav nafshi. And my pronunciation may be a little off on this lashava. I'm never quite sure how to pronounce this word. This is a weird spelled Hebrew word. But it literally means one who, asher, not he lifts. This is the verb nasa, to lift or to bear or to carry. I'm going with lift because this verb is going to be used a lot in the remainder of this psalm. And so there's kind of word plays here. But the one who does not lift for emptiness, for vanity or in vain, we would say, nafshi, my soul. Now, this comes almost straight from Exodus, the Decalogue, the commandment to you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain is literally you shall not lift the name of Yahweh your God in emptiness. So if God is the one speaking, and that's how the Hebrew text reads, then God is answering this. God's the one saying, the one who does not lift up for emptiness my soul or life. Nafshi, we've seen nefesh in previous Psalms, including the last one. Nafshi literally means throat, but it connotes your life essence, your life force. In Greek, it's translated with the word psyche, which is where we get the modern English word psyche. So if this is God speaking, then God is saying the one who can ascend, the one who has innocent palms and a pure heart, is the one who does not lift up my name, my nafshi, my life for emptiness. And so this would be parallel to who does not bear my name in emptiness. And so the Hebrew makes sense. I mean, it's worded a little oddly, but all of the ancient versions don't say nafshi. Some of the Hebrew manuscripts say nafsho. And instead of this yod on the end, it's a vav. And nafsho changes it to does not lift up in emptiness his soul or his life. And that's how the Septuagint reads. The Septuagint reads ten sukein autu, who does not lift up for emptiness his life or his soul. And that's also what we see in the Targum. The Aramaic translation has the third masculine singular ending on nefesh. So in that case, then it would read one who does not lift up or does not carry or does not bear his life, his soul, in emptiness or in vanity. So either reading works, but the ancient versions were split on this. And the verse continues, Valo nishba la mirma, and does not swear for falsehood. This would kind of echo, does not bear false witness. So that's who can ascend the mountain of Yahweh. And one who does not lift his soul or my soul in emptiness will lift something in return. Verse 5, literally, he will lift, and the sense of this in context is he will carry or he will receive, to lift, to take up. Barakah me'eth Adonai, a blessing from Yahweh. If you don't lift up your soul for deceit, you will lift up a blessing from Yahweh, is kind of how you'd preserve the wordplay. And righteousness, or some translations have this as vindication. Tzedakah can mean like a verdict of innocent, a vindicating verdict. But tzedakah can also mean righteousness, like an act of righteousness. So he will lift or he will receive, he will carry a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This, a generation, dorashah, seeking him. So this, a generation seeking him, Mubakshe panecha Yaakov Selah. One's seeking your face, Jacob, Selah. Now, in Hebrew, this is kind of weird because it went from, okay, this is a generation seeking him, which would be seeking God. And so you'd expect to read one's seeking, or those who are seeking your face, God. But you read in Hebrew, one seeking your face, Jacob. So there are a couple of ways to handle this. The first is to not take this as a vocative. The one seeking your face, O Jacob. Like, they're not seeking Jacob's face. That's kind of weird. So it would be, unless, I think it was Spurgeon in his sermon on this psalm said it's weird to read seeking your face, Jacob, unless God is condescending to the point of taking on the identity of Jacob, which is just, I think that's just a weird stretch. And even Spurgeon thought that was a stretch. He said, this is a hard verse. So another way I think you could take this in Hebrew would be one seeking your face, that is Jacob. In other words, it's appositional. The one seeking your face is Jacob. And this is being proclaimed to the people of Israel, which are referred to as Jacob collectively. I mean, Jacob I've loved, Esau I've hated. So I think you could possibly, if the Hebrew is correct, you could take this as apposition. The one seeking your face, that is Jacob. The Septuagint took it, though, as the one seeking to prosopon to theou Yaakov, the face of the God of Jacob. So that's the Septuagint reading. And that makes perfect sense. Like, that's not a hard reading at all. It makes sense. How would that have happened? Well, somehow Elohei Yaakov, the Elohei in Hebrew would have gotten left out through some scribal error or something like that. So that's possible as well. I think, again, either of these readings work. One is more difficult. The Hebrew reading is more difficult, and I think taking it as apposition, because remember, this is not like standard straight grammar. These are song lyrics, and song lyrics don't have to have normal syntax. They are meant to be memorable and vivid, not necessarily grammatically accurate. So we can see some of the different translations, how they've handled these. Lexham English, such is the sort of those who seek him, those who seek your face, even Jacob, Selah. So they're taking it appositionally. Jacob is the one seeking your face, God's face. NIV, such as the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, God of Jacob. So they're going with the Septuagint reading. King James has that seek thy face, O Jacob. They're going with the Hebrew and they're taking it as a vocative. JPS, that seek thy face, even Jacob. The NJPS, such is the circle of those who turn to him, Jacob, who seek your presence. So they're reading Jacob here as coming before the one seeking your face. So still taking it appositionally. All the standard versions, RSV, NRSV, ESV, they say who seek the face of the God of Jacob. They're going with the Septuagint reading. New American Standard has who seek your face, even Jacob. They're going with the appositional reading. And the Holman Christian Standard and Christian Standard both have who seek the face of the God of Jacob. The Message has this Jacob is what happens to God seekers, God questers. So there's taken Jacob as who is being spoken to. This actually closes the previous section. The innocent of palms, pure of heart, who does not lift up for emptiness, my or his soul, and does not swear for deceit. He will lift a blessing from Yahweh and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This a generation seeking him, one seeking your face, even Jacob, that is Jacob, or seeking the face of the God of Jacob. So this is all kind of explaining the type of worshipers that the God of Israel requires. And so now we come to something of like a call and response section. Verse 7, lift, there's the word again, sa'u, lift, sha'arim, O gates, rashechem, your heads. Now, the Septuagint does not have your heads here. It actually translates it as hoi archontes humon, your rulers. So the Septuagint was taking this word, roshechem is, rosh means head, but it can also mean chief or ruler. And that's where the Septuagint is coming from. So if you're reading this and you're like, wait, it's either heads or rulers. Because in Hebrew, Rosh has both senses. So this is either saying to the rulers of the gates to lift the gates, or as the Hebrew has it, it's saying to the gates, lift your heads. V'hinasu pitchei olam, and lift up or lift high, O gateways everlasting. So patach is like opening or entrance, gateway even, and sha'ar is gate, like the whole structure, sha'arim, the gates. So line 7, as the Hebrew text has it, is saying again, this is poetry. This is imagery. It's speaking to the gate. Hey, gates, lift your heads. Hey, everlasting gateways, lift high. Why? V'yabo melech hakavod, so that he may enter, and let him enter. But this is like a kind of causative, so that he will enter, or let him enter, melech hakavod, the King of glory. And again, here you can't help but notice, once you're familiar with the Baal story, remember when the gods in the Baal epic were dejected because they were scared of Yam, Naharu, river, sea. They were scared of the chaos waters, the god that represents that. What did they do? They lowered their heads. The rulers lowered their heads. And what did Baal say? He rebuked them. And he said, why have you lowered your heads? And he's like, we're gonna go out. I'm gonna fight this guy. I'm gonna beat this guy. I'm gonna handle the chaos waters. So lift, O God, your heads. Let me answer Yam's messengers, the embassy of ruler Naharu. Then the gods raise their heads. Well, this is the psalmist writing a Hebrew version of that, saying, no. It's not, Baal's not the God of anything. The true God, to whom is all the earth and everything in it, who founded the earth upon the sea and the rivers, or above the sea and the rivers, or against the sea and the rivers. The real one, the one you should be worshiping, who dwells on his mountain, that's the true King of glory. So lift up your heads, O gates. because the King of Glory is coming in. It's being spoken metaphorically to the gates of Jerusalem, saying, open wide, lift up, but not just open wide. I mean, what would be lift the heads of your gates, like open your gates, but in a way that has a pretty clear reference. Double entendre is lift your heads, O gates. Like, don't be dejected, leaders of Jerusalem. Not because Baal is going to go fight Yam, but because the King of Glory is entering. And so, verse 8, and this would be like maybe the worshipers would say this, Mizeh melech hakavod. Who is this King of Glory? The answer, Adonai, Yahweh, Izuz v'gabur, strong and a mighty one. Adonai, Yahweh, Gibur milchama, a mighty one of war or of battle. Not Baal, Yahweh. So, Sa'u sh'arim sheichem, lift, O gates, your heads. Usa'u pithchei olam, and lift, O gateways everlasting. This word lift is all throughout this psalm. The ones who can ascend the mountain are the ones who do not lift their soul in emptiness. They are the ones who will lift a blessing from Yahweh. So lift, O gates, your heads. Lift high, O entrances or gateways eternal. Lift, lift, v'yabol melech hakavod, and he, or so that he, will enter the King of Glory. So one more time, just in case, so there's no confusion on who this King of Glory is. Mihu ze melech hakavod. Who is he, this King of Glory? Adonai Savaoth, Yahweh of armies. Hu melech hakavod, Selah. He is the King of Glory, Selah. And I like how Rolf Jacobson puts it in his commentary. He actually quotes Roberts, who, in commenting on this verse, says, as Roberts notes, to confess the Lord as King is to deny all other claims to sovereignty. You know, like in the New Testament, to say Jesus is Lord, which was one of the earliest creedal confessions, inherently was a polemic against Caesar, because Caesar claimed to be Lord in the Roman Empire. Caesar claimed to be Kurios et Soter, Lord and Savior. And so to say Jesus is Lord inherently meant that Caesar is not. And that could get you in trouble in certain parts of the empire. Well, similarly, in this psalm, to confess that Yahweh is the King of Glory, the mighty in battle, that meant that none of the other gods who claimed that title actually were. The King of Glory is Yahweh. That is, he is not Baal or El, as the Canaanites might claim. He's not Dagon, as the Philistines say, or Chemosh of the Moabites, or Milcom of the Ammonites. The real King of Glory is Yahweh. And I want to point to also, before we finish up, Charles Spurgeon, his writing on this psalm had some really good stuff in it. And in talking about like the earth is the Lord's, all the ones dwelling in it, he says, what a rebuke this is to those wiseacres who speak of the Negro and other despised races as though they were not cared for by the God of heaven. If a man be but a man, the Lord claims him. And who dares to brand him as a mere piece of merchandise? The meanest of men is a dweller in the world and therefore belongs to Jehovah, Yahweh. Jesus Christ has made an end of the exclusiveness of nationalities. And therefore, because the earth belongs to Yahweh, not to man, he says, the earth is not man's. He is but a tenant at will, a leaseholder upon the most precarious tenure, liable to instantaneous ejectment. The great landowner and true proprietor holds his court above the clouds and laughs at the title deeds of worms of the dust. People that think that they are the ones who rule the earth are in for a rude awakening come Judgment Day. And then in commenting on the passage that talked about who can ascend the mountain of the Lord, well, one who has innocent hands and pure heart. Creed and deed have to match up. And by Spurgeon's day, you know, there was kind of this idea that, well, as long as you believe the right things, you know, sola fide, faith alone, that it doesn't really matter how you act. And in fact, doing good works is a mark of pride because you're trying to earn your salvation. And so in some corners, especially in some Reformed corners, and Spurgeon was a Reformed preacher, there came to be this idea that like holiness of life was kind of secondary. It didn't really matter. And of course, people like Wesley and others were completely against that. But it's refreshing to hear somebody who's staunchly in the Reformed tradition, which Spurgeon was, to say it is to be feared that many professors, those who are professing faith in Christ, have perverted the doctrine of justification by faith in such a way as to treat good works with contempt. If so, they will receive everlasting contempt at the last great day. It is vain to prate of inward experience unless the daily life is free from impurity, dishonesty, violence, and oppression. And that's one of the things that actually set Israel apart from many, if not most, I think all of their ancient Near East neighbors. Only the God of Israel made worship and righteousness contingent upon how you treated other people, not just God, but those made in God's image. The other gods didn't really seem to care as much about how you lived, as long as you said the right words, brought the right sacrifices, maintained your personal piety towards them. You kind of then could just do what you want. This is a distinct difference between the God of Israel and the surrounding gods. But this raises something of a question or concern. If the only ones who can ascend, go up the mountain upon Yahweh and stand in the place of his holiness, if the only ones who can do that are those who are innocent of palms and pure of heart, who doesn't lift up for emptiness their soul, doesn't swear deceitfully, there's something of a paradox, like if only those who are already righteous will bear or carry away a blessing from Yahweh and righteousness from the God of his salvation, then what do we do if we aren't, if we have not met that criteria? So we just throw up our hands and say, forget it, I'll go worship Baal or any of the other surrounding gods, including our modern gods today. Power, prestige, hedonism, our own inward spiritual manifestation of what we think the divine is. Is that what we're left with? And this is where I love how Spurgeon closes his sermon. He says, "Dear reader, it is possible that you're saying, I shall never enter into heaven of God, for I have neither clean hands nor a pure heart. Look then to Christ, who has already climbed the holy hill. He has entered as the forerunner of those who trust him. Follow in his footsteps and repose upon his merit. He rides triumphantly into heaven, and you shall ride there too if you trust him. But how can I get the character described, say you? The Spirit of God will give you that. He will create in you a new heart and a right spirit." From another psalm we're going to get to. "Faith in Jesus is the work of the Holy Spirit and has all virtues wrapped up in it. Faith stands by the fountain filled with blood, and as she washes therein, clean hands and a pure heart, a holy soul, and a truthful tongue are given to her." And I think that's just a beautiful exhortation from this psalm, because ultimately, especially for the authors of the New Testament, the King of Glory who entered those gates on what is, as of the making of this video, we're going to celebrate next week, Palm Sunday, was the strong and mighty one. And he won the war not by conquering earthly armies, but by conquering the one who animates and drives all of those earthly forces and powers to begin with, by conquering sin and death, by taking the worst that Satan could throw at him, bearing it upon himself, going through death and coming out the other side. And the only way he could do all of that for the sake of his people is because he, in some way that we cannot wrap our minds around fully, was this King of Glory. So for the Christian reader, this psalm again takes on, just like the last couple of psalms we've looked at, a depth of meaning that it did not have before the advent of Israel's Messiah, Jesus. So that's Psalm 24. I was just absolutely fascinated by the references to the Baal myth that I had not noticed before. But when I came to this psalm again, as I'm working through the psalms for this playlist here on the channel, and really digging into and reading the passage, reading it in Hebrew, reading it in Septuagint, and then diving into the different commentators that have looked at it, now I can't not see the echoes, the polemic against the counter views that Israel was surrounded by, and in this case, the Baal epic. So if you missed that series, I'll link it in the video description below. Check it out. This is a great example, and there are many others. In fact, in just just a few Psalms from now, we're going to come to a very clear and strong polemic using the conceptual world of the Baal myth. But if we don't know the myths of Israel's surrounding peoples, if we don't know the cultural background, if we don't know the religious landscape into which God planted his people and breathed his scriptures, then we miss a lot of the resonances that they would have picked up automatically. So this is why I encourage people to look at the ancient Near East background, read the text. I mean, Paul was not scared to read pagan poets in his day, and he was a Pharisee of Pharisees. Pharisees detested anything from the pagan world because it was seen as idolatrous, it was seen as blasphemous, and yet Paul showed a familiarity with those writings, which then enabled him to build bridges to his pagan audience. In Paul's case, it was Greco-Roman paganism rather than Ugaritic Baal myth paganism. But the principle applies to both, and it applies today to modern religious settings into which God may be calling you and I. The more we know about the world that we're in, and the more we know about the inspired scriptures, the better equipped we are to bridge that divide in order to tell people in the world about the one who established the world upon the waters, upon the rivers, the true God, Yahweh, to whom all of creation belongs. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this gives you a new appreciation for Psalm 24. It did for me, and I was excited to share this with you guys. So that's all for now. Stay tuned for more here at Disciple Dojo. And in the meantime, as always, keep training.